I looked up and my roof was gone. It just went. And because of all the doors flying open and the roof being off, the wind tunnel just went crazy. Stuff started flying off the walls, zinging around the house.
Parts of Texas are absolutely in shambles tonight after Beryl made landfall near Houston, leaving homes destroyed, millions without power, and at least 3 people dead. I'm Gadi Schwartz, and this is Stay Tuned Now. Right now, more than 2 million people are without power tonight in Texas after Beryl made landfall as a Category 1 hurricane this morning. And that monster storm unleashed heavy rain and winds, making for some very eerie scenes at marinas as that wind ripped through. Houston was hit pretty hard with scenes like this. Backyards literally blending in with coastal waters. Another home was left looking unrecognizable after a reported tornado swept through. And even more homes are split in half from massive trees toppling over. 2 people were killed by falling trees, a third from heavy flooding, adding to the 9 people Beryl killed when it swept through the Caribbean last week. But Beryl's not done just yet. Tornado watches are in effect right now for East Texas and parts of Louisiana and Arkansas. The National Hurricane Center is warning Texas that they are still at risk of life-threatening storm surge and flooding in Beryl's aftermath. And if that was not enough, dangerous triple-digit temperatures continue to grip millions across the country, which in the West Coast is turning into catastrophic wildfire conditions, triggering evacuations in California, Utah, and Oregon. We've got team coverage tonight. NBC News meteorologist Bill Cairns will have the forecast. Steve Patterson is tracking wildfires here in California. But first, let's go to NBC News correspondent Kathy Park in Houston. And Kathy, what's the damage that people are looking at right now?
So, Gadi, we are still tracking a lot of damage across Texas, a lot of uprooted trees, debris scattered everywhere. A lot of the traffic lights are still not working at this hour. But fortunately, we're noticing that a lot of the water is starting to recede. In fact, at one point, this road was completely underwater. Officials, though, are saying that the storm has turned deadly in Texas. 4 confirmed fatalities so far. And earlier today, our colleague Priscilla Thompson was in Wharton, Texas. She spoke with one family who say they're lucky to be alive. Take a listen.
Roof is caved in, where the porch is, and the living room and the dining room. You know, everything on the back side of the house. We were in the living room, yeah. And so when the generator didn't come on and we moved away, that's where all the spiked wood came down from the ceiling. So we probably would have been killed, I think.
And Gadi, we should also note there were dozens of water rescues throughout the day today, especially during the height of the storm early this morning. In fact, we were over at I-10, not too far from here, which is a major thoroughfare here in Houston. And the floodwaters, the flooding got so bad it actually blocked traffic in both directions. We saw motorists trying to go over that water. Some of those drivers got stuck. A lot of them actually stopped and turned around. And actually, they were seen driving the wrong direction. So a lot of confusion, a lot of chaos, especially earlier today.
And so many dramatic rescues there. I know millions are still without power right now, right? Some people lost their homes, as you mentioned. What does recovery look like over the next few days?
So, Gadi, right now it's unclear, but officials have said that this will likely be a multi-day event. Right now, millions still without power. CenterPoint, which is the main power company here, they say they're doing everything they can to restore that power, working around the clock. They have mobilized crews pretty much from all over. They were on standby ahead of this storm. And also, you know, this is a pretty unique system because this was a system that came in pretty early during the summer months. Caught a lot of folks off guard, including one resident here in Houston. Take a listen.
Every year it seems like the hurricanes are predicted to be much worse than they actually turn out to be. And for the first one of this season, I mean, I think it's a wake-up call here.
And Gadi, we have been following press conferences throughout the day from city officials, and they say that we will likely have a clearer picture on the timeline as far as the restoration goes. But man, this is something that a lot of folks will remember for days, if not weeks, years to come. A lot of folks that we spoke with today, they were saying they have never seen sites like this, interstates completely underwater. So a lot that we are kind of grasping today, and a lot that we're learning from this storm system as well. Gadi?
And hopefully it's not an omen of things to come. Kathy Park, thank you. Now let's bring in NBC News meteorologist Bill Cairns. Bill, it seems like there is a lot of tornado activity as Beryl moves inland. How dangerous of a night are we looking at here?
Until about midnight, Gadi, it'll be extremely dangerous if we get more tornadoes on the ground. Beryl has been an epic tornado producer. We've had over 100 tornado warnings issued. We know that we've had at least 9 confirmed. I'm sure this number will go up. Looks like we just had another one, so now that's 10. And so we haven't had any reports of any injuries or fatalities. That's good. But we have had some destruction done to some homes and some condominiums. Right now, we have tornado watches up till the Little Rock area till midnight. I do count 1, 2, 3 active tornado warnings at this hour, and this little line here has been producing these storms all day long, especially in Louisiana, now shifting into Arkansas. Let's zoom in a little bit closer here, and this is a tornado cell that's going to be drifting up here just to the northeast of Texarkana. That's a radar indicated tornado, so that one has not been spotted on the ground, but you can see the other 2 cells right next to it. And as far as what we're going to deal with the rest of this evening, flash flooding still a possibility of a problem too, but now that storm's heading up here into northeast Texas, right over the top of Texarkana, heading into the Ozarks. The reason I mention that is if we get the heavy rainfall in some mountainous terrain or hilly terrain, the chances of flash flooding are greater than in anywhere it's flat. And we already have numerous flash flood warnings from St. Louis heading down towards the Springfield and Joplin areas in Missouri, and that's where we're going to see the additional heavy rainfall tonight. So don't be surprised tomorrow if we're talking about some significant flooding issues in Missouri. About 10 million people are under flood watches, and Gadi, it does look like about 2 to 3 inches of rain later tonight in those areas.
And Bill, I got to ask, I mean, it looks like this season is going to be a crazy season. So you wonder about the models and whether they're calibrated correctly. So hindsight being 2020, were the models off for Beryl's track here, or were they on?
I'd say from when it went to the Yucatan into Texas, the intensity forecast was excellent. I give that an A. Now, the actual where it made landfall, if you remember, it was kind of like Brownsville, then Corpus Christi, and then Port Lavaca, and then all of a sudden today, it was almost all the way up near Houston. So the actual path track, I'd give that more like a B- or a C+. It did shift at the last 2 days.
Yeah, important distinctions, especially as we head into this season. I know that it's been a week of record hot temperatures. We've seen records breaking out here in the West. At least 2 people have died over the weekend related to the heat here. So what's that looking like?
It still looks like this will go down by the end of this week as the hottest 7-day stretch in many areas of the West ever recorded. So this is for tomorrow. 128 million people impacted. More of the heat and humidity in the east, like 104 in D.C. Of course, we're going to watch Houston closely. They're supposed to be about 101 tomorrow. And the reason I bring that up is because a lot of people aren't going to have power and they're not going to have air conditioning. So for the elderly, the people that have special needs with medical issues, check on your neighbors. That's going to be very important tomorrow. And then here's the forecast for the rest of the weekend into the week. Look at Vegas, 117, 117, 118. The reason I mentioned that, Gadi, is because before this year, the hottest temperature ever in Vegas was 117. We hit 120 over the weekend, and now we're going to be about 117 plus right through the middle of this week. I mean, we've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, pegging what was the old record, that is wild. Bill Cairns, thank you.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, as we were just talking about, over a half a dozen wildfires are right now burning here on the West Coast, and they are being fueled by those brutal temperatures. And here's some of the big ones that we're keeping an eye on right now. In Santa Barbara County, the lake fire there has scorched over 20,000 acres. It started this weekend. It's already the state's largest wildfire so far this year, and it is threatening the former Neverland Ranch that was once owned by Michael Jackson. And then farther north near Sacramento, the Pay Fire in El Dorado County put an airport there at risk. Firefighters working hard to keep keep the flames from reaching the tarmac and the planes there. Some evacuations were ordered, and that fire is now 35% contained. And the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains, evacuation orders have been lifted for the French fire in Mariposa County. A little bit of good news there. But one family returned to what was left of their home, and they found only a brick fireplace left standing that you see there. And it's not just California that's burning. The Silver King fire in Utah continues to burn out of control. That fire erupted Friday afternoon, burning around 60 acres. Fire officials say this morning that number is now nearly 11,000. And NBC News correspondent Steve Patterson joins us now. Steve, some of these have the potential to turn into some monster wildfires, right? How's containment looking right now, and how are the evacuations going?
Some of them already are monster fires, including the lake fire, Gadi, which is burning near Santa Barbara, 20,000 acres, the largest fire that we're monitoring right now, 8% contained. So firefighters are making progress, I would say, on most of the fires, right? Like some of the fires have some level of containment on them, which is good news. It means firefighters are able to get a foothold. They are able to put some level of perimeter around the fire, which means they're pushing back from population centers. The problem is when you see this level of containment, it generally means they're burning off in some forest somewhere, which is harder to get to. The inaccessibility combined with the wind, combined with the heat, and we're talking about, of course, extreme heat. It's like over 100 everywhere in the West, makes it very difficult to put out those fires. So yes, a new wind gust, a new spark could easily cause those fires. And that's what we're seeing, right? It is still July. And there have been like 20 active large fires since mid-June, which is difficult. It is almost unheard of. We haven't had a fire season like this since probably 2020, and we all know how difficult that was as well. This is only going to get worse, and it seems that once they put one fire down, another one sprouts up. Very frustrating, Gadi.
Do they have the manpower to deal with the season that we're going into here?
You know, I mean, obviously it depends on what department you're talking about. California has CAL FIRE. It is almost like a military organization. They go in hot and heavy. They have a lot of resources. But you're right. Like once you get to a critical mass of fires, those resources start spreading thin. You have thousands of wildland firefighters that are spread out among dozens of fires. They're not going to be able to get quite the perimeter like they would if they were concentrating on one or two or three large ones. I don't think we're at that point yet. Some of the smaller departments, though, you know, you go to Utah where a number of fires are burning, Arizona, New Mexico, they have been a struggle, and they will continue to be so as this heat dome settles down on the entire western United States. It is all exacerbated by the fact that we're just roasting in this heat wave, and it makes things much more complicated. Just imagine trying to fight these fires in 100-degree temperatures. You've got all the gear on, and you can't necessarily push the fire back far enough to put it out. Makes it that much more difficult, Gadi.
And Steve, a lot of us here in Southern California are watching this. Can you tell us a little bit more about the fire that's threatening Michael Jackson's old property, Neverland, up there?
Yeah, I kind of figured you would ask that. That is part of the lake fire. That's the one that is burning near Santa Barbara, Los Olivos, to be more exact. Like, you have to think about it like this, right? The fire is the biggest fire in California. It is 20,000 acres. The ranch, Neverland, is 27,000 acres. I called the Wildland Fire Department that is working on this, the Forest Service. They're deep in there. They couldn't tell me like everything on the record, only to say the departments who are local departments that work in that area recognize that this is formerly Neverland, and they would realize what a sort of bad publicity this would be if that were to burn. So suffice to say, there is protection on it. I'm hearing there are backburns near it as well, but it is very, very close to burning on that property. Got it?
Yeah, 27,000 acres. That puts it all in perspective. Steve, thank you. And there are new questions about President Joe Biden's health tonight after New York Times is reporting that a Parkinson's specialist visited the White House 8 times in the last 8 months. Now, NBC News has independently verified the visits as well, but here's the thing. At this point, it is still unclear why the doctor was there and who he was seeing. This comes as President Biden and his campaign are digging their heels in as the number of lawmakers urging him to drop out of the race has increased. At least 9 lawmakers are now asking the president to suspend his campaign, including some senior ones. And the president, in response, is saying that he is getting frustrated by the, quote, elites of the party, while also sending a letter to his caucus writing that he is firmly committed to staying in the race and beating Donald Trump. And let's bring in NBC's Ryan Nobles to break this down. Ryan, it seems like President Biden is fighting on 2 fronts right now, right? One is Trump, his political rival. The other is a whole lot of friendly fire today. He seems to be going the defiant route on the latter, calling some Dems elite, challenging them to run against him. What's the mood like in there right now? Is he creating some red lines within his own party there?
Gadi, I think the feeling right now on Capitol Hill is a state of suspended animation. It seems as though Democratic congresspeople can't really figure out the next step forward. We certainly did see a few members of the House Democratic caucus come out and definitively say they think that Joe Biden should get out of the race. But we also saw quite a few Democrats in both the Senate and the House rally around the president and say that he should stay in the race. But the vast majority of Democrats are giving us a very ambivalent answer, saying that they need to answer more questions about their concerns about Joe Biden standing in the race, that their constituents have concerns, and that President Biden has to demonstrate that he has a path forward to beating Donald Trump in the fall. So what does that mean for the Democratic Party? Well, it means that Joe Biden is basically twisting in the wind as they try and figure out a path forward. And there are some Democratic members who believe that this just needs to end. They got to get behind Joe Biden and get it over with. Among them is Steve Horsford, and he's important because he's the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. This is the statement that he put out earlier today. He said, like me, they don't want to see Donald Trump back in the White House. And he's talking about Democratic voters and are ready to work to vote and ensure that doesn't happen again. We're not going back. We're moving forward. And again, the Democrats that are rallying around President Biden, they believe this is ultimately a binary choice between Joe Biden's policies and Donald Trump's policies. And it's time for Democrats to get on board. Gadi?
And Ryan, we saw Biden on Morning Joe today, not on camera, just on the phone, but he was trying to push back. And yet even on the phone, he seemed to kind of stumble a little, talking about Trump golfing of all things. And that has spun off a whole lot online into these conversations about how with it he actually is. A lot of attacks coming from that. It seems like his team is facing a rock and a hard place. Put him out there publicly, and still kind of put him out there to be exposed. It's almost like avoid any cringe moments that will be weaponized as soon as they air. And yet, like you said, suspended animation, all these Dems are currently watching to see if there's any missteps. It seems like such an impossible situation.
Yeah, I mean, this is the situation, Gadi. In order for Joe Biden to get out from underneath this hole or this rock that he's found himself under, he has to do the exact thing that most voters are very concerned that he isn't able to do, and that's to articulate a vision, to answer the tough questions, to be out in a public space with a ton of energy and vigor. These are all things that are difficult for any 81-year-old person to do. Every single one of us has an 81-year-old in our lives or had an 81-year-old in our lives and know what happens when Father Time catches up with you. And the concern, and concern is a word I heard over and over again today in the halls of Capitol Hill, is that with each passing day, this problem's only going to get worse for Joe Biden. When you're aging, you tend to not bounce back. When you start to slip, the slippage just continues on and on again. Now, what the White House will argue is that the president hasn't slipped, that he had one bad night, it was a 90-minute aberration, and that he is up to the job. It's his job right now to convince Democrats that that's the actual reality.
And Brent, finally, these questions about his health. I mean, I don't think that those questions could have been more directly asked at the White House briefing earlier today, and yet we still don't have solid official answers, right? How has the White House responded to the Parkinson's reporting?
Yeah, I mean, the White House really doesn't have a straight answer as to why this doctor with a very specific specialty in a disease like Parkinson's made so many trips to the White House, why it appears that he met with the president's personal doctor. They just wouldn't answer that question directly. They cited privacy laws. They said that they couldn't explain that away. This is what they said in response to the report that initially came out about this doctor's visit. They said, as we've disclosed in public reports from the president's medical team, President Biden is seen by multiple specialists for each physical. He has been seen by a neurologist, I should say, once a year for that physical alone. As each report has stated, that examination has found no signs of Parkinson's, and he is not being treated for it. A wide variety of specialists from the Walter Reed system visit the White House complex to treat the thousands of military personnel who work on the grounds. So they're even suggesting perhaps that this doctor wasn't there to see the president, but they're not coming out and saying that definitively, which is one of the reasons there's so many questions tonight, Gadi.
So many questions and suspended animation, which seems to be the word of the campaign. Thank you so much. And actor Alec Baldwin is finally going to trial nearly 3 years after cinematographer Helena Hutchins was shot and killed on the New Mexico set of the film Rust. Baldwin is facing manslaughter charges over her death, and jury selection is slated to start tomorrow, with opening arguments to begin as soon as Wednesday. But today, during a pretrial motion, lawyers had to sort out a few details first. NBC News correspondent Chloe Malas has more.
Gadi, Alec Baldwin's trial is expected to take about 2 weeks, and the judge today ruled on several different motions. One of them was very significant for Baldwin's defense team. One of the things that they did not want admitted into this trial was the fact that he was a producer, and the judge ruled in their favor. Now remember, Alec didn't just star in the movie, he was one of the producers, and all along the New Mexico special prosecutors have said that because Alec Baldwin was a producer, in their opinion, he had a responsibility to ensure safety standards on set. I want you to hear a little bit of what Prosecutor Johnson said during today's hearing.
That his conduct on set was reckless, and it was in essentially wanton disregard for the safety of others. And his role as a producer made him keenly aware of the safety rules that apply on sets, what his responsibilities are.
But one of the big questions, Gadi, remains is, will Baldwin take the stand in his own defense over the course of this trial? Now, his team hasn't said anything. It could be a game-time decision that his legal team makes. And, when you talk to different legal experts, there are differing opinions. Some say that it can do more harm than good when their client takes a stand. Another interesting potential testimony will be from the film's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. In this same courthouse behind me 4 months ago, she was sentenced to 8 months in state jail after being convicted of the same charge that Baldwin is charged with, involuntary manslaughter. And so she is expected to be called by the prosecution next week, but it's unclear if she's going to say anything or potentially just plead the fifth. We will hear from others like Dave Halls and Joel Souza, who was one of the individuals who was he was injured that day. He was the director, and he was shot in the arm after the bullet went through Helena Hutchins. So there are a lot of emotional testimonies expected to come over the next couple weeks, and closing arguments are expected to take place next week, and the whole trial is expected to end next Friday. Gadi?
Chloe Malas in Santa Fe for us. Thank you. And don't go anywhere. We are just getting started. Up next, dozens killed in a daytime missile strike on Ukraine's capital. The country's largest children's hospital significantly damaged by the attack being blamed on Russia. How Ukraine is responding, plus a federal plea deal between prosecutors and Boeing has families who have lost loved ones in plane crashes fuming. Why they say the company admitting to committing a felony falls short of what they were hoping for. And later this hour, can you do green energy too well? Well, that might be happening here in California, the state generating so much solar power that some of it has turned to waste. Our Liz Kreutz takes us inside the push to manage the oversupply in tonight's Future of Everything.
And there are those times under certain extreme conditions when we do have to curtail it.
When you say curtail, you mean throwing it away?
We say sending dispatch instructions to those fleets to reduce their generation, yes.
Hey there, welcome back. Let's take a quick look around the world. Today, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi met with Vladimir Putin in Moscow, part of a two-day trip to Russia there. It is his first time there since Russia invaded Ukraine, and that visit is being seen as a balancing act of sorts for India, which relies on both the U.S. and Russia to defend its borders against China, which is another very close Russian ally. And at least 15 people are dead after heavy floods triggered landslides in Nepal. More than a dozen are hurt, and some people are still missing there. At least 50 people have died since the annual monsoon rains started less than a month ago. And a reformist candidate has won the recent presidential runoff election in Iran. He defeated an ultra-conservative rival after campaigning on more social freedoms there. And he's also promised to engage with the West and has called his victory a new chapter for Iran. And history buffs get a load of this. These right here, these two pistols that Napoleon apparently planned to use to kill himself just sold at auction for over $1.8 million. Those guns are inlaid with gold and silver and have an engraved image of Napoleon himself. Now, his scheme was ultimately foiled when his squire removed the gunpowder. Napoleon took poison instead, but survived. And French voters have headed to the ballot box in numbers not seen in more than 40 years, and it has caused quite the case of political whiplash there, with the most recent message sent by the majority: they do not want the far right in power. NBC News international correspondent Josh Letterman has that story.
France is facing an unprecedented period of political turmoil heading into the Olympic Games following the stunning results of the election here yesterday, in which the far right was expected to come in first, but instead came in third, far behind a group of leftist parties. This means there will be no majority in parliament, there will be power sharing, and the president will have to share power with a new prime minister to be picked from the left. But President Macron announcing today he's going to hold off on that for a little bit, probably until after he heads to Washington for a NATO summit. He is asking his current Prime Minister, Gabriel Attal, who had already offered his resignation, to stay on the job to ensure stability for France going forward until he can work out a new arrangement, find a new prime minister, and potentially work out a governing coalition that can effectively do the business of government despite this period of shared power that France has never seen in its modern history.
Josh, thank you. And Russia has launched one of its largest attacks on Ukraine in months, destroying a children's hospital in Kiev. It was part of a barrage of bombings by Russia today. NBC's Danielle Hamamdjian has the latest.
In the words of the mayor of Kyiv, Vitaly Klitschko, this was one of the worst attacks on the capital since the war began in February 2022. It happened at rush hour when Ukrainians were on their way to work, and there was a barrage of missiles across the country, but many of them fell on the capital of Kyiv. One building particularly is getting a lot of attention, and that is the children's hospital, the largest children's hospital in the country. There are reports that some children were being operated on when the missile struck the building, but you could see scenes of utter devastation, parents running out of the building, holding their children, staff in utter shock at the idea that sick children may have been intentionally targeted. Now, the Ukrainian Air Force says that Russia used hypersonic missiles that can travel at 10 times the speed of light and are hard to intercept. Meanwhile, Russia, which always claims it does not target civilians, said so again today. It said that the actual target were military and industrial facilities as well as aviation bases, but that it was Ukraine, in trying to stop the attack, launched an anti-aircraft missile, and that's what caused the destruction in the capital. The president, Vladimir Zelensky, has called this a war crime. He has also called for an emergency meeting at the UN tomorrow, and it is going to be taking place. Russia is saying that it is going to present its version of events tomorrow at the meeting.
Danielle, thank you. And the latest Israeli push into Gaza City might have put recent ceasefire hopes in jeopardy. And NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley has more.
Well, the people of Gaza endured what they're describing as one of the worst bombardments they've seen ever since the beginning of these latest round of hostilities back on October 7th. This was focused primarily on the Gaza Strip, and health authorities in Gaza have said that some 40 people have been killed in just the past 24 hours, and about 75 of them were wounded. Now, these are ongoing attacks, and they really do undermine a lot of what we've been hearing from the Israeli government over the past several weeks. They are moving on now to a second or third, less intensive phase of the war in the Gaza Strip, that they're going to be retreating to certain positions, namely the perimeter of the Gaza Strip and some of the corridors that they've established throughout the center and in the southern part of the Gaza Strip, and using that, trying to launch sort of more surgical, more pinpoint strikes against what they believe would be Hamas installations. But now it looks as though they are still attacking in a broad military formation. Now, all of this happens as we've started to see a little bit more optimism around the possibility of a negotiated end to the war in the Gaza Strip, as well as the release of those remaining Israeli hostages there. Now, at the same time, we heard this just before the weekend from the United States saying that Hamas had budged on their primary demand, which is that they will not release any hostages unless Israel agrees to finally and fully stop their attacks on the Gaza Strip. Now, we heard last night from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He said that that is non-negotiable, that even though there has been some movement on the Hamas position, which we've been hearing about, he will not stop the fight in the Gaza Strip as long as Hamas remains intact. It's one of the main goals of the fight in order to completely dismantle the terror organization. Now, at the same time, this does make it sound as though it will be difficult to have these negotiations, but we are hearing that senior American officials are joining other negotiators in Cairo and then later on in Doha, trying to hash out a deal that could bring some measure of peace to the Gaza Strip.
Fingers crossed. Matt Bradley, thank you. And coming up, drugs like Ozempic are now being linked to a lower risk of cancer. We're explaining that coming up. But first, you got to see this. The Portland Pickles are a summer baseball team with, according to their website, the world's weirdest mascot named Dylan. And this is Dylan in Portland, making it rain and turning that rain green to boot. Pickles, man. I can't take them anywhere. Hey, welcome back. And here's some of the headlines we're watching tonight. Actor Jay Johnson is pleading guilty to interfering with police during the Capitol riot. He's known for his roles in Anchorman and Bob's Burgers. He's among over 1,000 people charged with crimes related to January 6th. Johnson is facing a max of 5 years in prison. The sentencing is set for October. And 2 people were killed in a Detroit block party shooting on Sunday, and over a dozen others were hurt. There were apparently something like 300 people there. So far, no arrests have been made, but police say they are launching a new response team to crack down on illegal block parties. And it is official. Paramount is merging with Skydance. They have reached a deal after messy negotiations for months, and just weeks after a similar deal fell apart to boot. Skydance is going to put in place some new cost cuts, and they're also planning to rebuild Paramount Plus. And a NASA crew is back home on Earth, kind of. A team of astronauts emerged this weekend after a year in a Mars simulator where they had been completely isolated for that voyage that never actually left Earth. Here's the crew's commander on what it was like.
I am so proud and honored to be part of this crew and project, and to be a part of a small incremental part of the work being done here on Earth that will one day enable humans to explore and live on Mars.
Now, that team got to do mock spacewalks, they rationed supplies, even growing their own vegetables. NASA is planning 2 more missions like it with a goal of sending astronauts to the red planet in the 2030s. And Ukraine's top high jumper just set the world record right before the Olympics. Yaroslava Mahujic is now the world champion, beating the record that stood for 37 years. She is now hoping to bring home gold for that war-torn country. And it's looking like Boeing, the company, is going to avoid getting dragged into a trial after reaching a deal with the government in connection with 2 deadly crashes overseas involving its planes. Boeing now admits to felony criminal wrongdoing in the crashes of 2 737 MAX jets in Indonesia in 2018 and Ethiopia in 2019. And under this deal, which still has to be approved by a federal judge, Boeing says it misled FAA regulators about new cockpit software that eventually brought both planes down, killing almost 500 people. Many of the victims' families say they feel let down.
Victim families feel like Boeing is getting off easy. We would have liked to have seen a more vigorous prosecution of Boeing. There's a general sense from victim families that Boeing just keeps stalling and delaying accountability and justice.
And NBC's Morgan Chesky joins us in the studio now. So, Morgan, can you explain the details of this deal and what did the victims' families specifically want?
Yeah, Gadi. Well, first of all, the families have been calling for Boeing to be held liable now for years. And essentially, you heard one of their attorneys saying that they believe this is a sweetheart deal, even though Boeing says that they are essentially pleading guilty to a felony. The list of stipulations here as part of this deal is relatively lengthy. I want you to take a look at what Boeing now has to do going forward as a result of these recent incidents that have put them under an even greater microscope. They agree to pay $243 million. They also agree to invest $455 million in a compliance and safety program. Two more stipulations here that stand out to me, Gadi. They have to agree to an oversight, a regulator of sorts, a monitor for the next 3 years to make sure that these compliance and safety programs are actually up to par. In addition to that, the board of Boeing is agreeing to meet with the families of those victims involved in those two fatal 737 MAX crashes. That's certainly on its face seems like a good step forward, but I can tell you that the families that have already spoken out and their attorneys that we've already heard from, they're likely not going to be changing their tune here, calling this, again, a sweetheart deal. One attorney saying that manslaughter would be a more fitting charge in this case than the charge that they pleaded to, which was conspiracy to defraud the federal government. Again, it is a felony, but certainly not serious enough, at least in the eyes of the family. And that's why they've already filed an objection to the judge that's considering this case. That judge, Gadi, does have the power to toss out this plea deal. Whether or not they will do so remains to be seen. But as it stands for the families, that's kind of their action that they have left at this point in time.
How could this complicate the relationship between Boeing and the federal government? I mean, they are huge contractors in the defense space, obviously aerospace.
Right.
Does this affect any of those contracts going forward?
It certainly could, and here's why. Because Boeing has pleaded guilty to a felony charge here, Gadi, they now have to file a waiver if they want to do business with the U.S. federal government, who, of course, typically isn't in the business of doing business with felons. And so one would think, because so much business of Boeing's is with the U.S. federal government, that those waivers would be granted to continue, but TBD.
That's so fascinating that you say that, because you try getting a Q clearance with a felony on your record, right?
Right.
And we're talking about a whole company here, and I'm sorry for the dumb question, but like, I still can't wrap my head around the whole company being charged with a felony as opposed to a person. When you think criminal or criminally charged, you think
Right.
like a criminal, like a human being. And
You
this
do.
is a full company. How does that work?
I wondered the same thing. And in fact, I was reminded in researching this Boeing situation, what happened back to Purdue Pharma during the opioid crisis. You have a massive corporation that was criminally charged. And this is because, Gadi, in certain instances, U.S. law dictates that a corporation can have personhood, as silly as that sounds. Now, I think we're maybe used to hearing corporations involved in civil cases and not criminal. Right. So when you hear Boeing now has a felony on its record, it sounds odd, but it was essentially at the discretion of the federal prosecutors here. Who can they build a stronger case against? The individuals maybe on the Boeing board, or because it appears these incidents are so widespread and systemic across the corporation, they likely felt that their stronger case was putting Boeing front and center here, defining this corporation with personhood in this instance. And that is why we're seeing this charge fall out the way it is. Important to note, this specific federal charge faces up to 5 years in prison or a fine. Going to be awfully tough to put Boeing in and of itself behind bars. Yep. So that's why we're seeing that hefty, more than $200 million fine as a part of this plea deal.
Yeah, it takes prison right off the table there.
It does.
Morgan, fascinating. Thank you.
Thanks, Gadi.
And there is a new study that says weight loss drugs like Ozempic might be reducing the risk of certain cancers. That new study was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, and it says that the use of drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy reduce the risk of obesity-related cancers in millions of people with type 2 diabetes. And the CDC says about 40% of new cancer diagnoses are associated with excessive weight. Let's bring in NBC News medical fellow Dr. Akshay Syal to help us understand this all. Dr. Syal, talk to us about this study. What would you say to somebody who sees this and then comes to you and says, I want to start taking Ozempic to reduce my chances of cancer?
It's a good question, Gadi, and I think there's a lot of chatter on social media about this right now. And the short answer, Gadi, is that it's too soon for this, and this is not the time, or it's not enough evidence to really say that somebody who's not taking Ozempic already should actually start taking it to reduce the risk of cancer. But what we know, Gadi, like you said in the intro there, obesity is linked to about 40% of new cancers every year. I don't think this, if this pans out, this will be terribly surprising. But Gadi, at this point, this is an observational study. This does not prove cause and effect, meaning this does not prove that taking drugs like Ozempic directly reduces your risk of cancer. Rather, people who are taking these drugs are associated with a lower risk of cancer. Why? We don't know, Gadi, but we do know that obesity produces a low-level state of inflammation. That might be why. But further research is needed to say for sure. So if you are somebody who is thinking about taking it for this purpose, it's too early yet.
Got it. I mean, just looking at this study, is it too early to say that maybe reducing obesity just reduces cancer?
No, I think that there's enough established risk factors about, weight loss and reducing obesity can lower your risk of cancer. That is something that the CDC actually says, Gadi. Obesity linked to 13 different cancers. About 40% of new diagnoses of cancer every year are linked to being overweight. And I think part of it may be that low-level state of inflammation, that inflammatory state your body goes into, maybe driving some of this. We don't know yet. But I think, this is just another further piece of evidence that obesity can promote a state of inflammation, can promote potentially new diagnoses of cancer. So just another reason to fight that as a society.
Wow. Did you say 13 cancers? Which cancers are we talking here?
Yeah, 13 different cancers, Gadi. Some of them include gallbladder cancer, pancreatic cancer, ovarian cancer, colorectal cancer. You can see the full list there on your screen. And combined, Gadi, those make up about 40% of new cancer diagnoses every year. So something that, if this does pan out in further research, would be very, very exciting in our fight against cancer as a nation, Gadi.
I can't tell you how lucky we are to have a friend who dives deep, deep, deep into those journals. Dr. Akshay Syal, thanks so much for joining us.
Anytime.
And coming up next, the return of a summer tradition as American as apple pie. Shark Week, its influence on changing how we see those dangerous animals, and the extra importance this year after a string of shark attacks across the country. Stay tuned. Hey, welcome back. Here are some of the stories happening out west that we're following right now. A gunman killed on July 4th in Yellowstone National Park is being identified as someone who worked there. The 28-year-old didn't work for the Park Service, but he was an employee of a company that handles food services and some shops there. And police say he was making threats while holding up a gun early Thursday morning. He was shot and killed in a firefight with rangers, and one ranger was hurt during that firefight as well. In a terrifying hit and run outside of Los Angeles, 2 kids and an adult were taken to the hospital with critical injuries, and police say the car plowed into a group of 5 people riding their bikes last night in Garden Grove. The driver didn't even stop, and a witness followed that car and called 911. The driver was arrested on suspicion of DUI. And 13 people who went missing today in the Tahoe National Forest are safe. That group of hikers got lost near the burning Royal Fire, launching a rescue effort there, and they were fortunately spotted by a helicopter. The rescue team helped lead the group to safety. And just in time to pack those swimsuits and those coolers and head to the beach. Guess what time it is? Yes, it is already Shark Week, and that tradition started way back in 1988 on Discovery, and the original purpose was to focus on conservation efforts and fix misconceptions about these incredible apex predators. It has become the longest running cable television programming event in history, and who better to talk to than the guy that literally, I think, wears underwater jetpacks to find them and has even delivered shark babies with his bare hands. Our friend, the one and only Forrest Galante. Forrest, so good to see you, brother. Okay, so what kind of crazy shark adventures have you been saving up for this week? I feel like the whole year is a build-up to this week for you.
Oh, man, Gadi, your intros are always the best. It's a most wonderful week of the summer, that's for sure. Shark Week is such a tradition, as you said. And this year, we're bringing something really special to the big screen. We have set out on a show called Alien Sharks Ghosts of Japan, and that references not extraterrestrials, but weird, crazy, endemic species of shark that occur nowhere else on the planet, and quite frankly, species of shark that don't get exposure on the big screen, sharks that the world hasn't really ever seen before through media. And so in this 45-minute block of programming, we bring 17 different unbelievably unique species to the audience at home, all while in the search of the Japanese angel shark, which the Japanese call the yokai, or ghost of the sea, because it is so mysterious and difficult to find. So it really is a fun show.
We haven't been brought to the big screen until you like strap on a jetpack, right? Like, did I see that right? Are you flying around underwater in a jetpack? Yep. Dude, that is incredible. I can't wait to see that.
We've really made a reputation for ourselves of using cutting-edge technology and repurposing it for wildlife science. And when I found out there was an Iron Man-style underwater jetpack, I just had to have it. But sure enough, it actually did really contribute to covering a ton of ground and led to the eventual finding of the animal that we were looking for.
Yeah, you're flying in that thing. Seriously, this is must-watch television coming up. And we've also seen in the news on our show a bunch of shark attacks across the U.S. since the weather has warmed up. I got to say, I surf. I spend a lot of time in the ocean. I'm not scared of sharks. But like this year, I don't know. Just level with us. What is fact and what is fiction when it comes to the chances of getting chomped?
Look, I think it's fact that we see this every year, right? Early summer, people are flooding to the beaches, especially around the holidays. Beaches look like that, right? They're packed with people. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, and the fiction is that sharks are getting more dangerous or that there's more attacks. But what is happening is more people are going to the beach, more people are getting in the water. And at the same time, especially where you're seeing these attacks take place, like in South Padre Island and in Florida, the water is getting unseasonably warm really, really early every single year. And we've been seeing that more and more in the last few years. And when that happens, it boosts sharks' metabolism, and those sharks need to eat. So they come in close to the shore to look for the bait fish, as they always have done. And you have this confluence of events where you have a ton of people standing in the water and a lot of hungry sharks looking for food. And it's going to lead to some negative encounters. And that's why we're seeing this uptick.
That's fascinating. So it does seem like there is a correlation with the warming temperatures.
There's undeniably a correlation. As the sea warms, sharks' metabolism speeds up. Bait fish and smaller fish that sharks are used to eating have to move and cover more ground and oftentimes move in shallower. So the sharks have no choice but to go into areas that humans are frequenting. And that's what ends up happening. It's not like the sharks are all of a sudden like, oh man, I've got a taste for human calf. It's more that they're now in these areas where there are a whole lot of legs and a whole lot of people, and a whole lot of surfers, and they're hungry. You know, they're looking for food because it's so unseasonably warm.
Yeah, it looks like we got to share our new hot tub with some sharks. Can't wait to see what you got coming up on Shark Week. Forrest, always so nice to hang out with you, brother. Thank you.
Thanks, Gadi.
Now, before we go, it is time for the future of everything solar power harnessed here in California. Going to waste? That problem now impacting homeowners and green jobs. We're going to dive into the unexpected consequences and some potential solutions. It is the future of clean energy next. California, we call it the sunshine capital of the world, leading the charge when it comes to the future of clean energy. But is there such a thing as too much solar power? It sounds crazy, but the Golden State is generating so much clean energy. Sometimes some of that energy goes to waste. So what happens to all that extra energy? We're talking solutions in just a moment. But first, here's NBC's Liz Kreutz on how we got here.
Across California, it's a common sight. Rows of suburban homes topped with solar panels. But as the state works towards its ambitious clean energy vision, an almost counterintuitive problem has emerged. California is at times generating too much solar, meaning loads of good clean energy is going to waste.
Since solar power relies on the sun, it's often the middle of the day on days when it's not too hot that you can run into this issue of essentially having too much solar. People aren't home, they're not running their ACs, and the system can generate more than the state can use.
This imbalance has been dubbed the duck curve. Its belly, the time of day when solar production can exceed demand.
So that's the duck curve?
That's the duck curve. Yeah, there it is.
Inside California's independent grid operator, CEO Elliot Mainzer showed us how they manage the state's electricity in real time.
There is solar energy right now that's essentially being thrown away.
You know, the bottom line is that there are times when we do not have the demand for electricity for the full production of the solar fleet. Sometimes we're able to export it, and there are those times under certain extreme conditions when we do have to curtail it.
When you say curtail, you mean throwing it away?
We say sending dispatch instructions to those fleets to reduce their generation, yes.
In recent years, the amount of renewable energy curtailed, most of it solar, has skyrocketed, both from oversupply and so-called congestion, when there's more electricity than the transmission lines in some areas can handle. So far this year, the state has already lost out on nearly 2.6 million megawatt hours of renewable electricity, more than enough to power all the households in San Francisco for a year. To solve the problem, Governor Gavin Newsom's administration has been pushing to add more batteries to store that excess energy. And state regulators have taken a more controversial approach, drastically cutting financial incentives for homeowners looking to install solar.
Before, we used to have people clamoring to put solar on.
Ed Murray, who operates Aztec Solar outside Sacramento, says the impact has been devastating for his business. He's laid off 10 employees over the last year.
We were left figuring out what do we do now?
Since the changes, there's been a 66% drop in residential solar installations and an estimated 17,000 green jobs lost statewide. To make it cost-effective, homeowners now need to install batteries in addition to solar panels. But that can cost an additional $10,000 to $20,000 or more. In a statement, Governor Newsom defended the state's policies, saying in part, no other state in America comes close to California's solar production. And now we're adding more batteries faster than ever to help capture that energy to use at night.
Do you think California will be able to meet its 2045 clean energy goal?
Absolutely not. No way we're going to get there without rooftop solar.
New challenges casting a shadow on the path to a renewable future. Liz Kreutz, NBC News, Folsom, California.
And Liz Kreutz joins us now in the studio. Liz, let's talk a little bit more about the solutions here, right? Specifically battery solutions. How many batteries do we have in California, and how many is enough?
Yeah, I mean, ramping up battery storage is literally the key critical thing that California needs to do right now in order to be able to meet those 2045 clean energy goals, which is to become 100% carbon free by 2045. And so right now, we know that just 4 years ago in 2020, there was only 250 megawatts of battery storage. Now, this year, the goal is to be up to 8,000 megawatts, 2035, 19,500, 2045, 52,000. So they are working on ramping it up.
Okay, and then we're looking at those. Those are kind of like the old school lithium batteries, right, or whatever you want to call them. There's some pretty cool human ingenuity batteries that I've seen, like using nature, using things like gravity as a battery. In fact, I think that our colleagues over at CNBC put together a quick little explainer on how gravity as a battery would work with the company that's doing that. Just that. Take a look.
Instead of moving water, Energy Vault uses cranes and wires to move 35-ton bricks up and down, depending on energy needs, in a process that's automated with machine vision software.
We have a system tower crane that's utilizing excess solar or wind to drive motors and generators that lift and stack the bricks in a very specific sequence. Then when the power is needed from the grid, that same system will lower the bricks and discharge the electricity.
Okay, so Liz, if I understand this correctly, like take that duck thing, you know, the peak of the duck, and then use that to pick things up, and then when you need it, then you put them down like your car does when you're regenning?
Yeah, it's so cool. There's so many innovative ideas right now like that. People describe that like a Jenga building and bricks, like Jenga bricks of electricity that come up and down. There's another one they call a ski lift. And actually, there's an idea to use defunct coal mines and the slopes of defunct coal mines to be able to go down the slope and back up like a ski lift to generate and store energy. So many creative ideas. That one we just showed, the Jenga one, they're modeling that in Italy and India, but nothing like that here in California yet. I know that lawmakers have said permitting is always a challenge here, but obviously a lot of ideas.
Permitting is such a challenge, but like we're supposed to be innovators, and we've got a lot of sunshine, fingers crossed. Liz, thanks so much for joining us. That's going to do it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. We'll see you here tomorrow, but until then, stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.